And Stella is one of our committee members, and she attended the Enhancing Research and Understanding through Media Intensive Study Programme, which was organised by the European University Federation. And she's actually going to share her learning on how we might share our research with the media and how we can avoid being fake news. Thank you very much, Stella. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, Stella, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, let me change it a little bit. So I will start my timer. So hello everyone, my name is Stella Choi, and I'm doing a PhD with the School of Education in Trinity College, Dublin. So today I'm going to summarize my learning from the ERAM, that is, as Mary said, enhancing research understanding through media. And I will summarize it into a 10-minute presentation. It's about how to communicate your research to journalists or media so that it is simple enough for the public to understand, but at the same time, it is complex enough to reflect your scope of the research. So I will talk about the agenda later, but the first point I would like to mention is that after the 5-day intensive program, I really have a identity crisis because there were 3 Trinity College Dublin students attending, and they were basically from the science background, and the program is mainly about scientific research. My background in a bachelor degree is from science. I'm a speech language therapist, but I didn't consider myself as a scientist. So for the master, I go to the field of social sciences about counseling, but now I'm in education. So I kind of very confused. But I think the learning from the communication of your research to journalists is universal for different fields. So I hope the sharing would be useful to all of you. To this effect, I will be covering 3 main points. First, about fake news and ethics. And second is about 3 tips about effective communication to journalists. The 3 tips are language, visuals, and storytelling. And I'll also talk a little bit about the news values. And finally, we'll finish with a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please hold them until the end of my presentation. So what is your lemonade? It could be presentation in the conference. Like last month, I went to the first international conference to present my research, or it could be interviews by a journalist or to publish a paper. But before you get there, we should be aware of the high rate of rejections on COVID-19 research paper, because from the diagram you can see from January 2020, there were exponential increase on the COVID-19 paper topics, but they all bypass the peer review process and go directly to the media and the public. So the quality of the research are very questionable, and a study quoted about 50% of the COVID-19 papers were rejected around the world. And another study in Greek, there were 30% rejection rate of the papers. So that gave us an idea about it's really important for us to safeguard the ethics, as mentioned earlier by Professor Ann David about the ethics consideration that we need to take care of. And I would like also to draw attention to the diagram, the light blue line, that is the research on mental health. It is also on the sharp rise from January last year to June, and then continues to rise. So that's also related to my research, because that is about my research is about children's well-being. So I will ask Kitty to help me type in the chat about a very good video that I came across before the intensive program, which is by Professor Alan Kelly from UCC, and he included a lot of these figures about the research on COVID-19 topics and also about ethics. You can have a view later. So from the ERAM, I studied together with 20 other researchers or journalists together, and we talk about what topics we need to consider in an effective scientific communication. So we come across some common themes. For example, we need to pay attention to the visual, to the evidence, to the language, using plain language, and also have multiple views. So I will also ask Kitty to type in the chat about the Menti document we can do together, so that today we can make our output, such as 3 reminders about how to consider how to effectively communicate in your research communication to the media. And we'll go over it at the Q&A section maybe. So now I'm going to talk about the 3 tips about effective communication to journalists. The first is using simple language. So I discussed with other PhD researchers and journalists, and we come across my topic of research is children's well-being, and more specifically anxiety in children. So we chose the language to be respectful and understandable, and we should avoid using some terms such as symptoms, because the reason it is restricted to the medical perspective. Instead, we should use the signs. And also we should avoid using causes, because correlation is not causation, and we should use precursors or risk factors. Lastly, we should avoid using illness or sickness to describe anxiety, because again of the reason of the medical perspective and also the stigma problem. And we should use children with anxiety. And another learning is that about language, we can use more metaphor or analogy to explain the complex things about that. So I learned from my supervisor Miriam to use flower as a metaphor for children. So I really like the quote, "When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower." So it also applies to early intervention principles. The second tip is about use of visuals and figures. As we all know, people like figures and some beautiful photos, as I showed earlier. So my journalist colleagues also chose very nice pictures with different anxiety signs. And I think that explains a lot and also make you feel connected. For example, you may be thinking anxiety is very abstract, but if you see the photos and some description, you may think, oh, like me, I also have some signs of anxiety. For example, have difficulty getting to sleep, have difficulty eating, or struggling to pay attention and focus, and also getting irritated easily. So that is a very good visual things to show, to simplify your research, and at the same time, it's very good to reflect some theories. So for my research, I also chose 3 visuals to represent different theories. For example, on the right side, there are 9 Lego models that is built by children in one section, is one photo, and it's built by the approach I use is the Lego-based therapy, and 3 children build a freestyle collaborative build together. And I'd like to draw attention, do you see any, in every photo there are some fingers pointing at the models. That is, so the child also participates by pointing to the models after each section. So in the middle, there is a theory of putting the child in the middle and at the same time have the context. So I use these figures to represent the theory of the risk factor of anxiety. That is the transactional developmental model of anxiety. So on the left side is the universal design for learning. So I'm taking a photo of a hand holding 5 different color of the leaves and with different shapes. So I also added the caption different but the same. And I remember my sister's twins, they gave a speech about the twins. They are the same but different. So I take use of that application and think we are all different but the same at the same time to make the research inclusive. So the third tip is about telling the story. So I've chosen some recent news in Ireland that is related this is about a 7-year-old girl having severe anxiety and autism spectrum disorder at the same time, and she's waiting a long time for some service. And the time she needs to wait is 5 years. So that highlighted the urgent need of some appropriate interventions for this population. So while telling the story, I learned to use to think about a frame. So in this frame is to use a positive and optimistic frame, and the angle is anxiety is not a disease. It could be managed by all of us. So finally, I'll talk about the 7 news value versus your research. So I learned from the program that if your research have a higher news value, it is more likely to be covered. But I also learned that even if your topic may not be popular at the time, but with communications, people will be more aware of your topic. For example, I talked to the CEO of the Buddy Bench. She told me that 5 years ago, there's almost no one in Ireland know about or concerned about anxiety in children. But with communication, people are more aware of their well-being. And also the topic about, for example, the climate change is not popular before, but now it is very popular. So in short, the news values are impact, timeliness, prominence. If it's about important or famous people, it is more likely to be covered. And also proximity, bizarreness, conflict, and currency is about more about public concern. It is more likely to be covered. So I have also a PDF document which includes some top tips about communicating to the media, especially about interviews. So the one top tips is to first ask about what is the time, is it urgent? Because the journalists are usually very busy, so you need to ask how long you have to answer the questions or to have an interview. So I will send the PDF to you all later. So in summary, I have covered your role in the fake news and ethics, and about 3 tips about effective communication to journalists, and about some news values. And I would like to invite you to ask questions in the chat box, or and you can try to enter in the menti.com about some reminder about how to communicate to the journalists or media, so that we can have our learning here. And I will share screen about your responses. So thank you, and I'm going to stop sharing screen here. Yes.
You want to read from the chat?
Yes, great, pretty.
Very enjoyable, so timely, Stella. Well done.
I like the word timely.
Xi-Ning, I love Lego. Children love Lego. It is a brilliant idea to give therapy to children with special needs. Love the use of block play for reducing anxiety in children. Stella, well done. Lots of interest.
Yes, great. I'd like to explain a little bit why I chose Lego, because as you may see, some people may think children's well-being is restricted to psychologists or counselor or some psychiatric doctor. But I think it is, like Mary said, anxiety is everyone's business. So the Lego-based therapy is applicable for people in the education field, for example, teachers or teaching assistants, and also in the disability service, for example, as a speech language therapist or occupational therapist. So for people or professionals from these 3 areas could also be helping the children. So I'm hoping to involve as many people as possible to use this framework or this approach to help children.
Fabulous.
More comments there, Stella, while people might pop in answers to the Mentimeter so Stella can share. Well done, Stella, great possibilities. Love how you can reach a child receiving no services. Miriam, Aidan series is one for Andrew Loxley, he has lots of Lego. Joanne says, very powerful use of images, Stella, denoting our collective responsibility. Excellent, well done. Conor McGuckin says, great presentation, Stella. How do you think COVID-19 may affect your research?
Yes, good. That's a very good question, Conor. Yes, I have plan A, plan B, plan C as you. So the COVID, let me think of, there may be some possibility of not doing the intervention face-to-face. And so I have to think of some, or there are 3 parts, some parenting groups and also some reading the storybook about coping of anxiety to the children for the whole class. So I think of some other way because of the learning from COVID. And also there are some consideration of looking for some research who conducted those interventions using some online or interactive platform. So in Hong Kong, we are already conducting some Lego group through the Zoom. So I'm also looking into that alternatives. Maybe it's not the backup. If it is very helpful, I may plan it from the beginning or using some hybrid approach. So that is very good point to think of. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Do you want to share the Mentimeter and we might?
Yes, I'm looking at it. But there may be some technical problem if I can't share.
We can come back and you can share it after.
Yes, it could be.
Yes.
I see time's up, so it could be saved as a PDF, and again I can email to all.
All right, save it there, and we can come back to you after Celine's and put it up for people to explore over lunchtime. Maybe is that okay?
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Stella. I'm next going to welcome my colleague Xi-Ning. Xi-Ning's research interests are rural education, innovative education, technological intervention, and they have extra value for the role of education during and post-COVID. And Xi-Ning is a TCD CSE joint scholarship candidate. If I'll hand over to you, Xi-Ning, and I'll mute myself now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, everyone, and thank you for staying with us till now. And the good news is I won't be long, and after this, you can have your lunch break. So yeah, and I'm Xi-Ning, and second year PhD from School of Education. And today, let me share my screen. I'm going to talk about education, neuroscience, and COVID-19 making connections. So, sorry, can you see me okay with this slide?
Yes, Stella, we can. Or Xi-Ning, sorry, thank you, yes.
Yeah, so in the beginning of this presentation, I'm going to ask you to play a game with me. So if you can type that in your chat box, that would be great. Like, please answer me quickly. Say loud what color you see in every word, not the word you read. So please tell me what's the color of this word. And what's the color of this word? And what's the color of this word? Wow, wow. A lot of answers. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can see this is a bit tricky game, and this related to our brain function exactly. And okay, so thank you very much. So now, and thank you for your participation. And we are going to talk a serious topic about our brain function, education, and the COVID-19 pandemic. So recently, the interdisciplinary research between neuroscience and education is emerging as a growing field worldwide. Integrated educational neuroscience studies focus on, firstly, the function of our brain. It has seen as a biological organ that gives guidance to our behaviors, daily life, teaching, learning, and interaction. Secondly, neuroscience has tight connections with physical health, mental health, and relevant psychology theories. With these theories, that's why neuroscience and psychology influence education. Thus, research in educational neuroscience is promising, and it provides fundamental findings in relation to brain function for educational practice. In order to understand how educational systems, teaching and learning have been working or not working, reducing the distance between the laboratory and school environment, educational experiments could be designed to capture ongoing brain activity, also keeping pace with physical phenomena derived from brains that are engaged in interactive and realistic scenarios. And today, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to extraordinary global crises and educational disruptions in recent years. For example, the scale of its disruption of global education is unprecedented. Nearly 1.6 billion learners cannot go to school. This data is from UN, and it covers more than 190 countries in the world. All students encounter the closures of schools and other physical learning settings, which account for 94% of world students' population, and up to 99% in low and lower middle income countries. So there is an urgent need to reform the current understanding of education, especially teaching and learning. It is necessary to develop refreshed, expanded, innovative, and useful equipment to shape our educational practice and policies during COVID-19 pandemic. We might need a framework for it, and the framework of this equipment could be based on neuroscience. And more importantly, making this connection now is more relevant than ever. So this presentation, I'm going to share with you new discoveries. It is basic mechanism of learning, which can begin to inform curriculum, education policy, and everyday practice in an authentic manner. Let's begin with a case study. So as you can see from the picture, we have some experiments about neuroscience and educational activities by the near-infrared spectroscopy, FNIRS. So like this technology, FNIRS is a non-invasive brain image technique that measures blood oxygenation changes. Many neuroscientists have been using it, and similar technology such as EEG for a range of educational experiments. For example, there are board game playing with brain test, and 3 people here, and we test their brain activity if it's have some connections, if that's in the same channel or it's just very different. And we can see this picture is a music instrument playing with the brain test. So today's case study related to monitoring a teacher and student interaction experiment. So samples were females. One is a 4-year-old girl and another one is 23-year-old teacher. So in order to help this little girl, her compliance with FNIRS setup, reduce her panic, researcher has made a lovely fairy setting for this little girl. She was told the experiment room would be a room of spaceship, and she has been chosen as a young astronaut. Her duty is to play a game while wearing a special helmet, just like the teachers, and this is FNIRS cap. And in this game, the context is a space race. The teacher and little girl hold 2 types of plastic pieces in different colors. As you can see from the picture, it's yellow and blue. And the blue is And the rule is that they need to move these pieces in a pathway marked with numbers. Then the winner needs to reach finishing line as the first person and with a bit calculating skills. So in fact, it is an educational activity, a lesson in a very interactive way for this little girl to learn numeracy. And you can see from those pictures from FNIRS cap, red sensors send light, blue sensors detect light, and the channels grouped it in 4 regions of the samples: prefrontal cortex and the temporal parietal junction. Anybody knows why test prefrontal cortex and the temporal parietal regions of the brain? Because the prefrontal cortex is related to our high order cognition, such as counting or calculating, and the temporal parietal junction manages our social functions, such as empathy and mentalizing. So these areas of brain is what the experiment needs to test. And let's talk about the findings. So findings show that the signal of the child's brain activity was positively correlated with the teachers. You can see like this picture and the different region and has a connection. Also, there is an evident correlation between the teacher and the child's prefrontal cortex. These findings indicate the alignment of neural activity between the child and the teacher, and this alignment happened during their neural educational interaction, the lesson. So this case study looks simple, interesting, but it is more than that. It's remarkably innovative because demonstrating human brain activity in a classroom setting has been discussed for the long run. However, it has not been measured within classroom learning setting. And this experiment is very close to that level. So maybe in the future, we will see more neural educational experiment happen in a classroom. And maybe that would be my project. Therefore, neuroscience, the new dimension of our research and practice, it has potential constraints and springboards for acquiring higher human learning. For example, in Elon Musk's Neuralink project, with an implanted chip in the brain of a pig, the pig's neural language could be read by a machine interface. It could be another trend of future neuroscience field. Finally, today, coexisting with COVID-19 pandemic, neural educational studies help us to understand the course of brain function, effective learning, learners with COVID-19 phobia, online learning anxiety, and other mental disorders. And at the same time, it also questions us, how can we help them learn better? How can we design a quality curriculum for better teacher-student interaction? And how to tailor future policies in education to fit further COVID-19 related challenges. So this is today's presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me and feel free to contact me. Thank you so much.
Wow, well done on the timekeeping as well, and so much interesting to say. Just some of the comments there for you, Xi-Ning. Sorry now, catching up very quickly. You got brown, 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 white, 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 red, green, brown, white. Anyway, Connor says he's so excited about this new research that you're leading on with colleagues from China and Sweden. So it's a big piece of research. I was just commenting on how it's so interesting how the brain functioning is measured. A very exciting project, says Erica. Years ago, I was looking into neuroaesthetics related to drama education and neuroscience. I wonder if you've explored this angle. That's neuroaesthetics in your literature review, maybe. I can see you nodding. Yeah. Love this, Xi-Ning. Attention, adult to child attention, or when we focus our attention changes the brain. Aidan Siri says, of course, our brains are active when we are living, learning, doing anything, but lots of ethical questions of messing with brains in a systematic way. Some worry about better learning, better teaching. What is better? So I think that's a play on language and terminology, and we can certainly explore that too. Very interesting, says Ashley. Thank you, Xi-Ning. Sorry, things are just jumping here a little bit. Sorry, neuroaesthetics, says Erica, not near aesthetics. Apologies, Erica. This is very exciting research. Wonderful to hear neuroscience spoken about with such comfort and ease, Xi-Ning. And I have to say, yes, we are probably in a zone that an awful lot of us would find ourselves quite challenged and uncomfortable in, and you do it with such aplomb. Stella says, I'm interested which department you cooperate with and who are the experts in neuroscience to conduct the research. Do you want to maybe take one question and before lunch?
Yeah, I want to answer Erica's question and Stella's question together. So yeah, I have looked up about education and neuroscience in this general field. So I think a future research about neuroscience, it will be based in education and neuroscience, and we might use technology to assist this project as well. And thank you for my colleague from Sweden, Dr. Pan, to join here today, and thank you for supporting me as well. And so Dr. Pan is from Karolinska Institute in Sweden, and I have another working partner in East China Normal University in Shanghai. So this summer we're going to plan this project, and maybe next summer I can give another presentation about my findings, my own findings, and this is part of my PhD project. So if you have like further questions or want to talk more about that, feel free to contact me through the email. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, and you can pop your email into the chat box for anyone who doesn't have it, Xi-Ning. That would be wonderful. Just before our comfort break or lunch break, because I'm aware people are on different time zones around the world. We have people coming in from all corners. I might invite Stella back to see if she'd like to share her Mentimeter slide. Thank you, Xi-Ning. Is Stella in the room?
Yes.
Sorry, you might turn on your camera, Stella.
Yes. Sorry about that. I just typed in the chat the voting link. Please show your response in the link first before I can share screen.
Great. If I could invite people maybe to
yes, I have
vote.
You all see yet? Yeah. You can type in the menti.com about 3 reminders about what you think about we need to pay attention to when we communicate to the media.
Okay, we just give it a few minutes as people type in. Okay.
Yes, I can see the response are coming in. I can share screen now.
Excellent.
So this is the most exciting part. It's real time.
Your camera is turned off at the moment. Oh, good girl.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there are more response coming, and yes, I like those new inputs from you, such as authenticity, empowering language, think of impacts. Yes, I have an idea that, as I said, we are from different backgrounds, but these reminders are also very useful for us for our presentation, for public speaking, or for our thesis. So I think it's very useful for maybe even for some everyday communication. Like Connor said, you need to communicate your research like everyone can understand, his grandma can understand, his mom can understand. So I always bear that in mind. And about confidentiality, fidelity, news, accuracy, be precise, be clear, small chunks, yes, they are all very good captions. So yeah, later I will also email. So you can also take your time to give your response. I hope to have as many responses as possible, and then I can email the PDF to you all, okay?
Great, and we can maybe just put in some of the keywords for people as well, Stella. Thank you. It's a lovely image.